All right. We're live. Jillian, I would like to start out by asking you a question about your book. It's Unlonely Planets, How Healthy Congregations Can Change the World. And in the abstract of the book, which I found on Amazon, it says, when you, Jillian, moved to New York City, you realized what it meant to be truly lonely for the first time. You had no consistent community, people who would wonder where you were if you didn't show up. And a consistent community jumped out to me as like, I've never heard the word friends used in place of consistent community. How does that word, how did you like come up with that word? How do you think about that phrase?
The phrase consistent community.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's really it is, growing up, you're living with your parents, probably, you're in school, you're in class, you have people around you who like literally there might be attendance. They know if you're not there. And then when you move somewhere else after school, there's this experience of, people might not notice if I don't show up to something, if I don't find a new group of people, something I go to consistently, which could be church, could be synagogue, could be a yoga class, could be a 12-step group. Mm-hmm. Like no one will know if I'm gone. And that's kind of when you realize, or I realized, there's this whole set of skills I don't have of forming deep relationships as an adult when there's not these structures already around me to ensure that I'm around people consistently.
Mm-hmm. And is it a proximity driven thing of like you said you had these people in college and then you moved to a new city, so you were out of proximity with them, or are there other factors that play into the consistent community?
That's a good question. I think one is definitely proximity of like when you're in college, you can walk to all of your friends. Like I have friends who moved to New York, moved to Los Angeles, and then suddenly you could live technically in the same place, but be an hour and a half apart from each other. And you're like, okay, I can't walk to you anymore. And now suddenly there's all this scheduling that's involved and there's all this stuff. And so there's just a lot more barriers to being around people consistently.
Yeah. You bring up scheduling there. I feel like that's probably the hardest part that you realize once everyone gets full-time jobs after school. It's just like, oh yeah, you just schedule yourselves to death because things, life interrupts things. Was that kind of the common occurrence in New York City? Was that part of what played into your loneliness?
Yeah, I think that was a big thing was like one, just finding people who I had stuff in common with. Because when I graduated college, I had the kind of wisdom to realize, this is a time in my life when I can find new people. I'm kind of like clean slate. I'm in a new place. What kind of person do I want to grow into? What kind of people do I surround myself with? And just kind of had to keep going to things very regularly. And even if I didn't like something one time, like a dance event, because I was terrified of dancing, I feel like this is kind of a symbol of what it's like to do a new skill. Is like the first time I went to a dance event, I literally walked in, I looked at the people on the dance floor and was like, these people are weird. And I left. I didn't do anything. But it's kept showing up. And then it grew and evolved, and literally people would notice if I wasn't there.
I'm curious. New York City is, if not the biggest city in America, one of the biggest cities in America. And it's a place where I feel like folks who grew up in rural environments are like, oh, I want to be in New York City where I can find any type of person. So I'm curious, when you got there, knowing that, where did you grow up? Did you grow up in a big city or rural environment? But then like, how did that context happen once you got there? What surprised you about that?
Yeah. So I grew up in Fairfield, Connecticut. So kind of like a upper class, kind of like country club, tennis, golf people crowd. Went to school in Boston and then moved to New York City. And so I think for me, a big thing was the cultural diversity. Like I grew up in very white environments most of my life. And so like the racial diversity, the class diversity, but also the diversity of like people move to New York because they want to become something. Like you've got big dreams for yourself. Like if you're kind of chill, you usually aren't like, I want to move to New York City.
Okay, yeah.
Like that's
The
it,
hippies go to Boulder, right?
yeah, you go to Boulder for that. Like there are some very lovely chill people in the city, but like usually at least at the start, there's some big driving factor. Um, and so really seeing kind of that hunger that people had, that in my early 20s, like I super matched that energy. And so it really felt like I could fit in there.
So I'm trying to build this archetype of like the
Yeah.
person who moves to New York City and all of a sudden gets this like, oh, I don't have this consistent community anymore. And it's somebody who is driven. It's somebody who wants to achieve something. It's somebody who may not have that proximity of friends who are moving with them to New York
Mhm.
City. Like I think about the investment banking world. I bet a bunch of people show up in Murray Hill and they're like, oh, my entire fraternity or sorority is here. Like how helpful.
Yeah.
So with your work that you do in kind of the coaching business, or when you're talking to folks about the loneliness, what are the common characteristics that you see that I didn't just name?
Oh, the people who kind of work with me that they share.
Yeah, I guess when somebody thinks about like, well, I might be a little bit lonely, but like I don't think I'm this person. Like, is there a common archetype, or is it just everybody could fall victim to this?
Well, I think one, definitely everyone can fall victim to this. And I think that for some people I work with, kind of the way that they relate to people and their friendships, like it's fine for them their entire lives and they don't want anything more. And then there's some sort of moment where they realize that there's a deeper intimacy that's possible with people than they even realized. Like maybe they listen to an interview, maybe they go to an event or they go on a retreat and they have this experience of connecting with people and they're like, wait a second, my conversations have been maybe way more surface level or way more lacking in depth than I realized. And that was fine. And suddenly I'm at this point in my life where it's not okay anymore. And like, I really have to reshuffle the people who I'm around. And like, that's a big thing. And I think when someone reaches that level of consciousness, they're like, oh, I'm going to need support with this. Cause it's kind of like getting fit, where like, you can say you're going to get really fit, achieve these fitness goals. But if you don't tell someone those goals, and if you're not getting help, you could give up in 2 days and nobody cares.
Yeah. Right. So accountability is definitely one part that I want to dive into.
Yeah.
I'm a junkie for routines, but there was something you said about that. You
No.
mentioned consciousness, and it's
Yeah.
like that's trying to think of how to kind of word this
Yeah.
question, but friendships can be surface level and they can be deeper and deeper and deeper on a very skin and sort of an inverse pyramid, I guess. But you can be surface level with a lot of people, but you can be vulnerable with only a few number. So do you think about, I don't want to say fixing loneliness, but overcoming loneliness as like moving deeper down that pyramid?
Well, I think there's a lot of factors to it. I think like kind of one piece is developing deeper friendships over time, like spending time together, having those vulnerable conversations, maybe having disagreements and fights, learning how to overcome them. So like having those long committed relationships with people, but then also kind of the personal work of like you can only go as deep with other people as you go with yourself.
Hmm.
Like if you don't know yourself, if you don't understand maybe why you haven't been vulnerable and intimate with people, you're not going to be able to have those type of satisfying relationships. But then also there's kind of like a spiritual component of like, do you feel like you're part of something bigger than yourself? Do you feel like things that happen for a reason? Do you feel supported by like something? Uh, and so that's kind of a reason why I really like talking about community outside of organized religion, because I really feel like even if you aren't a church person or a synagogue person or a mosque person, whatever, um, there's a really beautiful support in talking about God and talking about just something that has your back, that when you totally abandon that, it's like there's this piece missing.
Yeah. Yeah. There's something really important about connecting your purpose and the work that you do with something outside of yourself. The
Mhm.
model that I kind of use is the Japanese concept of ikigai, which
Yeah.
was like westernized. I'm sure you're familiar with it, but it's got the circle of like how do you serve the world with your purpose?
Yeah.
And I find that in like high performing people, or maybe the stereotypical type A, sometimes you focus a lot more on what am I doing, what can I get paid for, and how can I build status, and
Mhm.
you forget and leave behind the how can I serve the world. Is that a conversation that you have with your clients at all?
Totally. And like I've had some clients, especially male clients who work in tech and who have like very high salaries, or they run the company or have sold companies. And like talking to them, you would kind of think like, well, this person has a ton of friends and they're going to interesting things and they're traveling. Like, why would this person be lonely?
Mhm.
But from where I'm standing, it seems like maybe this person isn't rooting their actions and their values. They might not be totally sure what their values are, and they don't kind of have a North Star of purpose that they're shooting for. And so everything kind of feels like loose and like there's nothing going towards anything, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. Like they're just like amassing things, and they're like, "What do I? Yeah, what's the point of all this?"
Yeah.
Like the dragon in the dungeon.
Hmm. Wait, what do
So
you
I'm envisioning like the Hobbit of like
do?
there's a dragon that has all the gold it could ever want. Maybe like Aladdin is the better reference of like, you have all the
Okay.
gold and you get trapped there.
Yeah.
Going out on a limb.
I
Uh,
love it.
you founded the Joy List
Hmm.
to deal with this problem, or to kind of use what you've learned to attack this problem of
Hmm.
loneliness. I'm always interested to see why people stick with interesting projects, because I imagine this has not been like the easiest thing ever. Starting a company isn't. So what were the hurdles you faced, and then
Yeah.
what made you like stick with it?
Yeah. So I've been doing the Joy List every week since November 2016.
Wow.
Like it's the most consistent thing I have ever done. I
Okay.
have never missed an edition. Uh, it's like, yeah, it's just a habit now. I'm like, even if I have COVID, even if I'm traveling, whatever, like it's getting done.
Hmm.
Um, but I think honestly, the biggest hurdles were that I got a lot of conditioning, mostly from like older men in New York City who had great intentions and like saw something in me that they wanted to kind of stoke, but lots of like, you have to make this into a really profitable company. You have to bring it to multiple cities. You have to hire employees. You like get seed funding, like blow this thing up. And I kept trying to do that and it just never worked. Like right before COVID, me and a guy who was my business partner at the time, we'd like been flown out to Facebook and we were having a meeting with their team about doing something with the Joy List and bringing it other places. And then obviously COVID happened and like it just all fell apart. And I kind of took that as a sign like for years I've been trying to make this thing bigger than it is. And I think just having like a 7,000-ish person newsletter and I help those people every week and I get to have ads and I get to promote my coaching, like, and it's not in other cities. Like maybe that's just enough and that's fine.
Oh. And what made you continue on with it? What like
Yeah.
through all those challenges?
Yeah. No, it'll make me feel emotional. I mean, it's just like hearing from people like, yeah, I moved to New York and it's super overwhelming. And like I've heard from a few people recently, there's a circle singing event I promote where it's like you get together and it's essentially just like you learn a song as a group and you all sing it together. And
Okay.
people being like, that was one of the most fun nights of my life. Like I wouldn't have known about that if it wasn't for you. And like all these little ripples that I'll never know about, it just feels like very important.
Yeah. It's crazy once you like change one life with whatever your product is. It's like no amount of money can make up for that.
Yeah. Yeah. Like the emails I get, like I have when people sign up, they get an autoresponder email that's just like, hey, how did you find me? What are you struggling with right now? And like the amount of people who are just like, I feel like something's missing. I want something in terms of connection. I've lived here for years and I don't have friends. Like people really just give me the real stuff.
Yeah.
And it's just always a reminder like, almost every day that this matters.
Have you read The Minimalist Entrepreneur?
No.
So the gentleman who founded Gumroad, which is like an online platform for people to sell things.
Yeah.
It's,
Yeah.
he wrote a book all about how he started a VC company. It failed in like tremendous fashion. And then he like went to Utah, met a bunch of down to earth like people, and then built
Yeah.
Gumroad, which is, it's a funny story. I wish he like wrote another one about my time in Utah. But
Yeah.
it's all about what you just said about what I get out of this is changing people's lives and like impacting people in a unique way. It's not about building the next unicorn, which I
Yeah.
think folks in our generation get caught up in because that's what
Mhm.
the media focuses on.
Totally. And I will say, figuring out how to build a profitable business, being a solopreneur and doing it from a really values aligned place is really, 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 really hard.
Yeah.
Like, there's a part of me that wishes I'd done all this while having a full-time job. Um, but it's just one of those things where it just seems like it's not meant to be. Like, I've applied for plenty of full-time jobs in my day and like never gotten them. Or
Mhm.
like the company will offer me something freelance or part-time. And I'm just like, all right, I guess like now's not the time. But it is like very overwhelming and very financially hard sometimes to figure out how to make it work.
Yeah. And do you sometimes go to some of these events that you advertise out to people to just like blow off steam and like throw yourself into a new environment to stop thinking about all the work stuff?
Oh, 100%. But like, honestly, going to events that I put in the newsletter, people will, they might come up to me and be like, oh, are you Jillian from the Joy List? Or like, I found this through you. And so oftentimes the events that I go to, I won't put in the newsletter because I'm like, I don't want to run into like, because
Yeah.
I've learned this about myself recently. I feel like I'm very much an anthropologist. Like, I love dropping into environments where I don't super fit in, or like I just don't know anyone there, and kind of figuring out like what are the norms here, what kind of people are here. Like, I feel like I just always learn way more about myself in that way than like going to ecstatic dance for the millionth time. Um, and so those kinds of things I also feel like might not be the best fit. Like YPO.
I don't think so.
It's the Young Presidents Organization. It's like this
Okay.
wild thing where it's like you have to earn $2 million or more a year as an entrepreneur to like be a member. It's like these
Nice.
uber high achieving people. But I've been talking about leading a couples retreat for the organization in Colorado. And there's a piece of me that's like, you are nothing like these people. Like, how can you facilitate workshops for them?
Mhm.
But also how exciting it is to be around people who are so different and be able to offer my skills. Feels very fun.
Yeah, this brings to mind an example. So for the listeners here, Jillian was a mentor at the Human Performance Hackathon in New York City.
Yeah, I was like, not my vibe.
Perfect example of you jumping into something head first. But there was also a yoga nidra class,
Yeah.
which, there's probably 100 people there. I bet nobody in the classroom had done yoga nidra before, maybe a handful. Nobody on my team had. And we all, signed up for this of like, it'll be something different. Who knows? And the guy there could not have been more different, talking about like Boulder hippies. This guy fit the
Yes.
bill through and through. And by the end of the class, we were all like, wow, that was amazing. Like, how do I sign up for a year-long subscription of this guy? So I think it's super helpful. It stretches the brain probably in a lot of amazing ways to
Yeah.
continually jump into new environments. So hopefully it gets to happen with you in this couples retreat.
Yeah, I would love that. Also, do you know what that guy's name was? I didn't get to meet him.
No, we called him Ponytail Bob, which is
Tony Bob?
definitely
Great.
not his name, but we'll we'll explore Yoga Nidra hackathon teacher. I wanted to pivot a little bit into
Yeah.
a slightly different topic, but you're talking about how when people go to these events, sometimes they drop into like really deep experiences.
Mhm.
And do you think, I don't know how much you've kind of explored the topics of flow and like Mihai Csikszentmihalyi's work, but do you think that those deep experiences and those kind of higher levels of consciousness, do those occur because you're sort of in a group out of your element, like really focusing on the task, or like why do you think those deeper experiences occur?
I have so many thoughts on this question. Oh my
Let's
God.
go. Yes.
Okay. So I think most events are designed terribly for people to drop in with each other. Like, I think event organizers often forget how socially anxious people are and how kind of high alert people are when they're in a space where they don't know what to expect. And so I think in order for people to really drop in, you have to do way more work than you think to help people feel at ease, especially if it's a group of people who don't know each other. So like I used to run an event in New York called the Joyless Social, which was a social to help people make friends. And like from start to finish, we had it structured. So like when you get there, there's a volunteer at the door and they greet everyone individually. They're like, so glad you're here. This is a space where everyone who's here is here to meet new people, just like you. Name tags on your name tag, write your name, go up to somebody and then ask them this question. So it's like super handholdy. Like this person's probably coming alone because most people come alone. The tagline is come alone, leave with the new friend.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
So it's like you're being greeted by someone, they're making eye contact, they're like, hey, if you want someone to talk to, I'm here all night. And then they know how to start a conversation with someone new. Like all of the guesswork, all of the like, oh my God, I'm walking to a room with 100 people and I don't know who to talk to or what to say or what to do. Like all that is taken away. Like a little bit of kind of free flowing conversation. Then we would circle up. I worked with this guy, Ezra Bookman, who runs a company called Ritualist, and he designs rituals for his job. And so he would lead the group in kind of exercises and like grounding and breathing. And then we would do small group conversations. And we would kind of close by having people share stuff they were doing that they wanted to invite other people to. So it could be like, I want to go to the opera. Anyone here want to go to the opera? Or like, I'm learning how to embellish jackets. Anyone want to do that with me? And then like just all of these opportunities for people to connect and get what they came there for, which is new friends and connection. But like, if we just had a room with 100 people who wanted to make new friends, I think we'd probably make like a quarter of the connections that would have happened if there wasn't that much facilitation, which probably sounds like overkill, but I really don't think it is.
And did you learn and sort of iterate upon this to be like, all right, this drops people in quicker, or like this, how are you tracking that?
Yeah, I mean, it's a big lesson for me. Like kind of ironically, my the way I automatically do things is doing them alone. Like I'm very much like, oh, I'll just do it better, just me.
Yeah.
But when it comes to events, you can't do it just solo. Like I think one time I literally did try to produce the event by myself, which was an insane task.
Yeah.
So I had Ezra, who was my producer and the ritual designer. I had a volunteer coordinator. I had a team of volunteers. And so I think just one, giving myself the spaciousness in my brain to be more present to the people there. And like having all of these touch points for the people to be like, if someone is feeling socially awkward, like we're giving them stuff to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's this concept of like individual flow versus group flow. And it's like you can kind of use different ways to drop into either one. And they're sort of slightly different experiences of the same overarching idea. And I feel like if you can get a group of people into a state of group flow, that's like a superpower. And it probably happens at like Red Rocks. We keep referencing Colorado, but like probably happens at Red
We
Rocks
need to go on a trip to Colorado
every weekend.
Yeah.
But is that something that you were keeping in mind as well? Or like, I know that you're a writer as well. So like, I want to know, do you try to utilize flow states in your writing? Like, tell me all this.
Oh, this is so funny. So Ezra, the ritual designer, it was his birthday this last week, and he had a full birthday weekend that like he designed like a giant ritual.
Cool.
So I came back last night, so I'm like a little out of it today. But I was talking with him about writing because he was on a artist retreat and thinking about writing. And like I have a history as a freelance writer. I've done a lot of ghostwriting and a lot of content writing since I was in college. And so I feel like I see writing in a way less serious way than a lot of people do. I think a lot of people are like, oh my God, I've got to like be in this incredible mental state to write. And I've got to be like set and the writing's got to be incredible. And it's just like, if I'm not ready, it's going to be pointless. And I think I've just written so much content for other people where I'm like, you don't have to work that hard and it doesn't have to be that good.
Yep. Just like anything else.
Yeah, like just do it. And I feel like there's this weird culture with writing where there's like almost like people get congratulated for like suffering. They're like, oh, it's gonna be hard. And I've got to complain about the process.
Spent 8 years on that book.
Totally. And I'm like,
good work, man.
Like, okay. I think also it's just something that since I was a kid, I loved writing. And so it doesn't feel like a big chore. But I really feel like that's something people could benefit from in writing, is just being like, it's not that big a deal. Like, I'm doing this to express myself. I'm doing this to get a point across. It'll get better. But like, also, it doesn't have to be genius for it to help someone.
Yeah. It sounds like a lot of how you think about it, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but it's sort of taking people from an initial state of anxiety in a task and then like getting them comfortable as quickly as possible, because that kind of comfort allows you to open up and be vulnerable. Is that the ramp that you see?
That's a much more succinct way of saying it than what I said. And when you said, oh, have you iterated on the event and changed things? One thing I realized that was very important was saying out loud multiple times throughout the event, everyone is here to make new friends.
Yeah.
And like, I noticed the more I said it, the more people kind of like let their shoulders drop and like looked comfortable. Because I feel like just saying it once, people forget. And then that voice comes back that's like, I'm bothering someone if I come up to them and like, no one wants to talk to me. And I had people come up to me after and they were like, this is the first event where I didn't have social anxiety.
Wow.
Like, because they knew and were reminded, like, that voice in your head that's saying you suck and no one wants to talk to you is wrong.
Yeah. What's the long-term goal that you have with clients of like when you know you've overcome loneliness?
That's a really good question. I feel like kind of the human condition is feeling lonely in a way. Like, I feel like if you didn't feel lonely ever, you would be like a deeply enlightened being.
Yeah, a shaman in the woods.
I'm you and you are me, and like we are all the same.
Ram Dass, yeah.
Totally, like you would be Ram Dass.
Yeah.
But just to kind of have the social muscle to be able to put yourself out there and trust that like you're not for everyone, and that doesn't make you a bad person. And also that the higher your standards are for the people you have in your life, the harder it's going to be to meet those people. And like, that's okay. That being alone is okay. And I really feel like it's just the self-esteem piece of knowing that, and just being like, I can be alone. I can meet new people. They might not like me. That's okay. And like, that's a lifelong thing that people learn. I do that. I learn and forget that all the time.
Yeah. It sounds like it's almost in a way changing your identity, or the way that you think about your own identity, of like, at this point, you're like, oh, I can't talk to new people. Like, that's not me. It's not who I am. And it's building the skill or the habit or the routine to say, I've done this several times and I'm comfortable with it now. And you can drop into that state. Is that right?
Yeah, totally. I think you nailed it. And that it's like, just being curious about other people. Like, I had a client say to me recently, she was like, talking to new people feels forced, which I thought was like a great way of putting it. And I was like, well, yeah, it will feel forced. Like, if you're not used to doing this, it's like anything, you do something new, it feels forced. The more you practice it, the more natural it will feel. But yeah, like, that's a great observation. It does feel forced at first.
Are there any kind of riffing off this client, are there any other like common objections that you find yourself hearing again and again and again from folks?
Yeah. I think a big one that I've talked about on social media recently is I always reach out to my friends more than they reach out to me. Like kind of this like mental tallying that people do, which honestly I think isn't super in service to people. Or it's like, listen, you will have friends who are in different life stages than you. Maybe you're single and maybe your career isn't super busy at the moment, and your best friend is someone who's married with kids and has a job.
Yeah.
Like you're going to have to reach out to them more than they reach out to you. And like there are some people who like maybe you kind of care a little bit more than they do. But when you hang out, it's great and it feels equal and balanced and it's fun. Like you might just reach out more than they do. And what if that's fine?
Yeah.
I feel like everyone's deep fear is like, I care more than they care. It's like, well, maybe you do.
Yeah. It's
Okay.
there's like a black and white of like fair and unfair, and relationships just destroy that. It's like, welcome to the gray.
Yeah, it's like you can't. I was on a different podcast recently, and the female host, she was like, it's like you're sitting at a lunch table when you're in elementary school, and you're like, it's not fair. Like I gave you one, and you have to give me one now.
That never leaves us. We
Yeah,
just
like yeah,
take
it's our
that
little
learning forever.
kid.
Is I want to get a little bit deeper into like the
Yeah,
consistent community, and you
yeah,
think about a lot of people come in. I'll speak to myself here. I won't project, but I'll say I have sort of family issues that I would love to like go home at Thanksgiving and just have. I'm the youngest of four. I have two
yeah,
parents, and I would love for everybody to just like get along, be that like rock solid foundation for each other, right? Like no matter what's going on in the world, I always have these guys. It's not like that. It's like World
yeah,
War III at a
yeah,
lot of Thanksgiving dinners.
yeah.
So is that another thing that you think about of like, yeah, maybe family's not the place where you're going to find that consistent community?
I mean, that's why I do the work that I do. Same with me, like my family of origin has never felt super supportive or like a warm, fuzzy place I can go and be vulnerable. It feels very like shielded. And so like that's why I'm so obsessed with this stuff, is like trying to get the feeling of support and nurturing that I didn't get from my family. But slash, and I will say, kind of like a thing that I've talked about a lot in therapy and I've just seen is like really, I feel like the people who feel the most connected are the people who are like, at the end of the day, I got myself.
Yeah.
And like, that's a hard truth. And like, yes, we have community and we have people, but none of that is promised. But what is promised is our relationship with ourselves.
Mm. So it sounds like there's a lot of self-work. There's a
Yeah.
lot of putting yourself into jumping headfirst into uncomfortable situations with, hopefully they have a facilitator like you who makes it a more comfortable process.
Yeah.
What's kind of the third step that you would say if somebody's starting down the path of like, COVID was a wrecking ball in my social life and I need to like get back out there? Like, what's your piece of advice?
Yeah, I would say to make a list of the people who either you want to make sure you stay in contact with or the people you want to deepen your relationships with. And then even like if you have kind of quote unquote best friends, whatever language you like to use for that, you like either write those down or write down the people who you might want to deepen into best friends, or have those spots blank and like have it somewhere where you can see it, like in your desk or your bedroom, your bathroom mirror. So I feel like it's easy for us to get into this pattern of, oh, I don't have anyone. And then to look and be like, no, I've got 5 people, 10 people, but also to remind ourselves to reach out and be like, okay, these people matter to me. And especially in New York, it's easy to be like, oh, there's like 80 new people who I could talk to.
Yeah.
I do this all the time. And to be like, what's my priority? But also doing this exercise, and I did this exercise for myself recently, it can feel really hard. And it's something I actually avoid doing a lot because, like, if there are blank spots in that, or if you're like, I'm not sure who my best friend is, and I would love to have a best friend, and to like see a blank space is deeply uncomfortable.
Mm.
And like, we can judge ourselves and be like, what kind of person doesn't have a best friend, you know?
Sure, sure.
Yeah.
It reminds me of Brene Brown's list that I think she said she carried it around in her TED talk, but she's like, I find myself caring more about what the stranger at the grocery store thinks about me than like my people. And she's got this list of like people whose opinions I care about. And this
Yeah.
sounds like it kind of relates to that.
Yeah, 100%. And stuff like that is so important if you're like a person who maybe is more public and gets lots of feedback from people. Like, okay, the internet's the internet. It's designed for people to say weird shit to you all the time. Like it doesn't.
I've never heard it said like that, but that's true. Yeah. It's the
Yeah.
weird shit generator. Just like, oh,
Yeah.
what are we getting
Like,
today?
oh my God, that's not what I meant at all. The more my Instagram grows, the more I'm like, how do people who have like 1 million followers handle this? They like have to have someone run it for them.
Yeah. It seems like I mean, I haven't published yet, but in the book that I wrote, it's kind of that area that I focused on was like judgment is really at the core fallacy of like we're not good at judging other people because we don't have enough information. So we can't
Yeah.
judge ourselves off other people. Like
Yes.
social media just jumps on this loop and it's like, get on the hamster wheel. Let's go.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
really hard. This is kind of a tangent, but I feel like it's a piece of advice that's helpful for
Take me.
humans. Is like I'm in this weekly group of friends, and there's one guy whose name is Blake, who he sees the world very differently than I do. And I love talking to him because he's like, I think if it wasn't for this group, we wouldn't be friends. And
Yeah.
we know this about each other. Like I would say that to his face. And he would hear me a lot kind of be like, oh my God, this person said this negative comment about me. And like, he would just watch me kind of spiral out and take it as truth. And he was like, what if they were wrong? And for some reason, that idea just blew my mind. Like I had never considered that someone giving me negative feedback could just be wrong.
Yeah.
I was like, what?
Holy moly.
I was like, oh my God, you like blew my mind.
You seem to do a very good job of creating repetition of like a weekly friend group. I imagine is pretty rare. Like I don't know anyone else who does that. Maybe it's just me and my friends, but like what made you start doing that?
Well, so actually, it wasn't me who started it. It was my friend Casey Rosengren. Shout out to Casey, who started it.
JC.
Yeah, he lives above me in this building. No, he doesn't. But it was him who he had that intention of like, what would it be like for a group of New Yorkers to get together every week for a year? And so the group of people, we like kind of did this practice group almost for a few weeks. And then we had what we call a discernment period, which is like people saying if they want to commit for the year or if they want to drop out. And then we committed for a year. And we have been doing it for over 2.5 years now.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
That's like it's not a crazy concept, but at the same time, you guys are kind of mad scientists for saying we're going to meet every week for a year. That's a major, as we talk about scheduling and we talk about all the things that complicate relationships. That's impressive.
Well, it's been because most of this time was COVID, and now people's lives are opening up. People have travel. There's just like more stuff, and so we have what we call governance, which is like talking about what our agreements to each other are. And that's been a big one of how much you show up and like what our agreements to the group are. And if you can kind of leave for a period of time if you need to, and then come back, like what if someone has a kid, just these things, because we want to do this for a long time.
Yeah. You guys have like formed a constitution almost. You'll like secede from the US. So what's the name of your country going to be?
I know, right? I don't know. It's funny. But that's been a very new conversation.
Wow. Okay. Well, this has really got my brain firing up. So I'll probably run out of questions soon because it's too full of ideas. Jillian, I appreciate your time. I want to make sure that you have a lot of resources out there, and we're going to put them in the description. But if you just want to tell everybody like where they can find you.
Yeah. I am that Jillian on everything. I'm thatjillian.com, Twitter, Instagram, and you can find everything about me, coaching, workshops, all that good stuff.
Good deal. Well, this has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you.
Oh, you're too sweet.